path always be there.
Please accept my humble obeisance to Srila Prabhupada. Good. So, are we ready for the class? Okay. So today I will speak on I will speak on the first canto, first chapter, and verses 4 to 11. This is the beginning of the questions by the sages. But before I will present a summary of the first 3 verses of the Bhagavatam. The idea is that I think it's best to go systematically to the Bhagavatam, because that is advised for the study of the Bhagavatam by the Bhagavatam itself. And I presented already the first canto for the Bhakti Vaibhava course, and I have all these lectures prepared, and I think that will be most useful, and I hope so. So we will start today with 114, the questions of the sages of Namisaranya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Naimise Nimisaksatre Esaya Sanakadaya Satram Svargaya Lokaya Sasra Samman Asata. So once in the place, in a holy place in the forest of Naimisaranya, great sages headed by the sage Sanaka assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees. I will read the purport, Srila Prabhupada's purport. The prelude of the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken in the previous 3 slokas. Now the main topic of this great literature is presented in Srimad Bhagavatam after its first recitation by Srila Sukadev Goswami was repeated for the second time at Naimisaranya. In the Vyaya Tantra, it is said that Brahma, the engineer of this particular universe, contemplated a great wheel which could enclose the universe. The hub of this great circle was fixed at a particular place known as Naimisaranya. Similarly, there is another reference to the forest of Naimisaranya in the Varaha Purana, where it is situated that by performance of sacrifice of this place, the strength of demoniac people is curtailed. The Brahmins prefer Naimisaranya for such sacrificial performance. So the devotees of Lord Vishnu offer all kinds of sacrifices for his pleasure. The devotees are always attached to the service of the Lord, whereas fallen souls are attached to the pleasure of material existence. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that anything performed in the material world for any reason other than for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu causes further bondage for the performer. It is enjoined, therefore, that all acts must be performed sacrificially for the satisfaction of Vishnu and his devotees. This will bring everyone peace and prosperity. The great sages are always anxious to do good to the people in general. And as such, the sages headed by Saunaka and others assembled at this holy place of Namisaranya with a program of performing a great and continuous chain of sacrificial ceremonies. Forgetful men do not know the right path for peace and prosperity. However, the sages know it well, and therefore, for the good of all men, they are always anxious to perform acts which may bring about peace in the world. There are sincere friends to all living entities, and at the risk of great personal inconvenience, they are always engaged in the service of the Lord for the good of all people. Lord Vishnu is just like a tree, and all others, including the demigods, men, siddhas, charanas, vidyadharas, and other living entities, are like branches, twigs, and leaves of the tree. By pulling on the root of the tree, all the parts of the tree are automatically nourished. Only those branches and leaves which are detached cannot be satisfied. Detached branches and leaves dry up gradually despite all watering attempts. Similarly, a human society, when it is detached from the personality of Godhead, like detached branches and leaves, it's not capable of being watered. And one attempting to do so is simply wasting his energy and resources. The modern materialistic society is detached from its relation to the Supreme Lord, and all its plans, which are being made by atheistic leaders, are sure to be baffled at every step. Yes, they do not wake up to this. In this age, the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord is a prescribed method for waking up. The ways and means are most scientifically presented by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and intelligent persons may take advantage of his teachings in order to bring about real peace and prosperity. Srimad Bhagavatam is also presented for the same purpose, and this will be explained more specifically in later in the text. So this is the text 4. Sexual militam yena tasmai shidove nama chichitaya manobistam staptam yena bhutali Swam Pradamyam Dadanti Svapadantikam Pandeyam Siyuda Padkamnam Sigam Vaishnavam Sa Siyupam Jajatam Sakamagnatam Fitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Sri Krishna Stayana Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sakalita Shivshakam Vitam Sha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinavana Jatpate Gopesha Goka Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kansna Gauri Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhama Sudadevi Pranamama Haripriye Pankha Kalpa Visha Kripa Sindhavasa Patinam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Nama Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Samadika Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurivani Pracharane. Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskachai Desatarim Shilaprabhupada. So before going into this section, I will use 10 minutes first to give a summary of the purpose of the first 3 verses and read the verses. That because it's important. The first verse defines the absolute truth. The second verse describes what's real dharma and what's cheating dharma, cheating religion. That and the third verse invites us to taste the nectarian juice of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That so now let's stop the sharing for a moment, and we'll look at. Okay, just a moment. It's here, yeah. So the first verse of the Bhagavatam defines the absolute truth. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Yachanmadhyasya Tom Vyatitartas Tatis Savishyasvara Tenne Brahmaridaya Adgavye Moyantiat Suraya Teobrimidam Yatavnimayo Yatatisarvam Risu Damnos Pensudanyas the Korakam Satyam Dimahi. O my Lord Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance to you. I meditate upon you, Sri Krishna, because he is the absolute truth and the primary cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as once bewildered by the illusory representation of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested by the reactions of the 3 modes appear factual. Although they are unreal, I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. So Srila Vyasadeva begins with the Srimad Bhagavatam with an invocation. Then it's followed by the first verse, which defines the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the source of the Brahma Jyoti. So Lord Krishna, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, is the creator, the maintainer, and annihilator of all cosmic activities. Both Krishna and the living beings are individuals, but Krishna is supreme and controls inconceivable energies. If one does not have transcendental knowledge, one will misunderstand this Bhagavatam and all what follows. Because this Bhagavatam is meant for Paramahamsas, that Srila Prabhupada explains the spiritual energy is real and the material energy is temporary. It's an illusory reflection of the true spiritual energy. The absolute truth is independent. Krishna is conscious of everything and controls everything in the cosmic creation. Everything that exists is a combination of matter and spirit. The living entity is spiritual and therefore qualitatively one with the absolute truth, but quantitatively different. So Prabhupada further explains The Supreme Lord is the independent, supreme intelligence and power that empowers all creative acts of dependent living entities. Under the influence of illusion, living entities cannot understand what is beyond the purview of their imperfect senses, and they think themselves to be the only creator. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the absolute whole, or Brahman, the source of everything. He inspired Brahma to create. As superintendent of the material energy, Krishna is Abhijna, fully cognizant, and Svarat, fully independent. One who neglects the supreme authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead will be punished. So there are references to the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada writes, in ancient Puranas. We find a reference in the Matsya Purana and the Padma Purana. Great commentators on the Srimad Bhagavatam are Jiva Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, and Balabhacharya. The original Adiras, that's interesting, Srila Prabhupada said, the original Adiras is pure sex psychology, devoid of all material inebriety. The study of Srimad Bhagavatam can help to elevate one to the perfectional stage of transcendence. So, and then we have verse 2, which explains real dharma different from cheating of material motivated religion. Dharma pachita kataivatra paramani matsaranam satam vityam vastamanotra vastashivatam tapo tayon mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mamune kite kim paparishvara satvayat avarutyate tra kitipisisvasivitat ksanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within the heart. So, Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport, irreligious life, he says, is a barbarous condition concerned with animal propensities, and is opposed to religious life centered on pious activeness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Higher, however, a higher form of religion is concerned with self-realization and the awakening of one's relationship with God. This, in lower stages of human civilization, there is always competition, rivalry, and religiosity only for material gain. Further, Srila Prabhupada explains that the energy of the Lord is simultaneously one and different from the Lord. Attaining the transcendental position of the Lord frees one from all miseries. The Srimad Bhagavatam is a natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, written by Srila Vyasadeva. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam should be done in a submissive, not challenging mode, with a desire to hear. It should be heard systematically, verse by verse, starting with the first canto. Therefore, I'm starting today with the first canto. So the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam can lift you immediately to the position of Paramahamsa. Srila Prabhupada writes that. Now the third verse, Nigama kalpator halitam phalam sukamukam ritadrapyasam yutam vivata bhagavatam rasna leamur uraska uvivavukha. O expert and thoughtful man, Relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of all Vedic literature. It emanates from the lips of Sri Sukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Now, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all mundane activities and mundane knowledge. It is the queen of all Vedic literature. The Vedas are a desire tree. They offer gradual rising of the living entity to the platform of knowledge of Krishna and experience of spiritual rasa in relationship with the Supreme Lord. That actual happiness is attained when one exchanges one's constitutional rasa with the Lord. One should therefore hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, which attracts even liberated souls from a representative of Sukadev Goswami, and not from a professional reader who did not go to the gradual process of understanding the project. Now we are at text 4. I presented quickly the essence of the first 3 verses of the Bhagavatam. It must be said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he gave in Dhaka 30 days lecture on the first verse. So 30 days, only the first verse. Of course, it's a sum and bone, and it contains everything practically. But now we go back to this 4th verse, and I read the translation once again. That once in a holy place in the forest of Namaisaranya, great sages, headed by the sage Shaunaka, assembled to perform a great 1,000 sacrifice for the satisfaction of the devotees. So we heard before in verse 3 that Srila Vyasadeva is inviting us to taste the juice of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we know Lord Chaitanya also tasted the fruit and distributed it. Gadadhar Pandit was reading, Gadadhar, yeah. He was reading the Bhagavatam before Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya, he was hearing the Bhagavatam. He heard the whole story of Prahlad Maharaj. And after when it was finished, Lord Chaitanya said, start again. I want to hear it again. I was so eager to hear it again and again. Then we know Gadadhar Pandit was, he was so full of ecstasy when he was reciting the Bhagavatam that tears came out of his eyes. And it fell on a manuscript, and by that the ink was wiped out, and it could not be read anymore. It is interesting. Of course, Lord Chaitanya teaches us how to perform devotional service. He is Bhakta Rupa. He comes in the form of a devotee to teach us how to surrender to Krishna. But yes. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains the purpose of the Srimad Bhagavatam is to wake us sleeping people to spiritual life. That so in the last paragraph, that I read the last paragraph again of this of the last paragraph. Yeah. In this age, the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord is prescribed It's the prescribed method for waking up. The ways and means are most scientifically presented by Lord Chaitanya, by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And intelligent persons may take advantage of his teachings in order to bring about real peace and prosperity. Srimad Bhagavatam is also presented for the same purpose, as will be explained later in the text. So we will hear in the verses today how the sages of Namaskar put forward questions. They are putting forward questions in the same mood of compassion for the fallen souls. So in the first two questions, we will see the concern of the sages for the benefit of humanity. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that this forest of Namasaranya is the hub of the universe, and the hub of the wheel is Namisaranya. So they wanted to sit there because the purpose of their sacrifice was to please Lord Krishna, that who is Pargaya, who is glorified in heaven, and for Lokaya, which Srila Prabhupada translates as the devotees. So yes. Now, in the fourth paragraph, Srila Prabhupada mentions how the sages are so concerned. They perform acts to bring peace, about peace in the world. So they are sincere friends to all living entities. And at the risk of great personal inconvenience, they are always engaged in the service of the Lord for the good of all people. So this Srimad Bhagavatam is for the welfare of all people. All the questions of Maharaj Parikshit and all the questions we will hear of Vidura and so on are for this purpose. The purpose is pleasing the Lord, the devotees, and help people. So we personally are also hoping that the Lord will appear in our sacrifice of reciting and hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. We will continue to do that every week systematically. And this is from the Padma Purana. Lord Krishna says, I'm not in Vaikuntha. I'm not in the heart of the yogis, he said. But I'm there where the devotees are hearing and chanting my glories. So we have the great desire that Lord Krishna will appear in our Bhagavatam morning class. So one can say, you are discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. What is the benefit for the whole world? What's the use of this sacrifice? So when I asked this question to the students, then we got many reactions, and I write some of the points that we made in our discussion. So it's mentioned. First, it attracts Lord Krishna's mercy. And when Krishna is pleased, then everyone is benefited because he is the root of the tree. Then also, we heard in the purport, the power of the demons will be curtailed. Interesting. And the vibrations will vibrate through the entire universe, so powerful. The 6 Goswamis, we know, what did they do, the 6 Goswamis? They were sleeping and living under a different tree every night. They made such great contribution to humanity, and they gave us so many books. But they were just living and sleeping under a tree. So when Srila Prabhupada was lecturing at Damodar, or the Damodar temple, he was presenting nectar of devotion. And Srila Prabhupada was describing how Gopal Bhatta would recite the Srimad Bhagavatam. He would recite the Bhagavatam, and Rupa and Sanatan were listening. And they were sitting and writing. And Jiva Goswami, he was writing the Krishna Sandarbha. That Srila Prabhupada said, and in this way the entire movement was started, sitting and discussing together. So Srila Prabhupada was also sitting in the Radha Damodar temple, writing Srimad Bhagavatam. And before that, before he came to America, he wrote the first canto that we are discussing now and brought it with him on the Jaladutta. So this was the first part of the first canto. He printed the first canto in 3 volumes, we know. I know the original has also been reprinted, which is very nice. And it shows on the cover the material and the spiritual worlds and all different incarnations and the leaders of the Vaikuntha planets with all their names. So now we will hear how the sages will first, what will they do now? They will first worship Sutta Goswami. And we will read text 5. Ta ekada tumunaya pratahuta hutachnaya satkritam sutamasinam papacho idam adarat. One day after finishing their morning duties, by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seed of esteem to Srila Sutta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters. Purport. Morning is the best time to hold spiritual services. The great sages offered the speaker of the Bhagavatam an elevated seat and called the Vyasasana on the seat of Sri Vyasadeva. Sri Vyasadeva is the original spiritual preceptor for all men, and all other preceptors are considered to be his representatives. A representative is one who can exactly present the viewpoint of Sri Vyasadeva. Sri Vyasadeva impregnated the message of the Bhagavatam unto Srila Sukadeva Goswami, and Sri Sutta Goswami heard it from Sri Sukadeva Goswami. All bona fide representatives of Sri Vyasadeva in the chain of disciplic succession are to be understood to be Goswamis. These Goswamis restrain all their senses and they stick to the path made by the previous acharyas. Goswamis do not deliver lectures on the Bhagavatam capriciously. Rather, they execute their service most carefully, following their predecessors who delivered the spiritual message unbroken to them. Those who listen to the Bhagavatam may put questions to the speaker in order to elicit the clear meaning, but this should not be done in a challenging spirit. One must submit questions with a great regard for the speaker and subject matter. This is also the way recommended in Bhagavad Gita. One must learn the transcendental subject by submissive oral reception from the right sources. Therefore, these sages address the speaker, Sutta Goswami, with great respect. So Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, morning is the best time to perform spiritual activities. So Srila Vyasadeva used to get up early in the morning and perform his sadhana. So the sages got up early and performed their sacrifice and sat down to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Also, Krishna would get up in the early morning. This is in the Bhagavatam 10th canto. He would get up in the early morning and meditate on himself. And then, he also performed sadhana. in Srimad Bhagavatam 3, Canto 3, chapter 24, text 45-47 purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, we have the Sanskrit word in this verse, Utachnaya, burning sacrifice. The word in the verse 3:21, 45, 47 is very similar. Huta asanam, being offered oblations in the sacred fire. So Srila Prabhupada explains that Kardama Muni is a brahmachari, and he was also offering oblations to the fire. Srila Prabhupada writes, those engaged in brahmacharya cannot sleep until 7 or 9 o'clock in the morning. They must rise early in the morning, at least 1.5 hours before the sunrise, and offer oblations. Or in this age, they must chant the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So that's our sacrifice. They got up early in the morning, they did their sacrifice, and now they are together to hear the Bhagavatam. So Srila Prabhupada did not make this up. Even Srila Vyasadeva and Lord Krishna gets up early in the morning, and they are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So text 5 here says that Sutta Goswami is a qualified speaker. He's a representative of Vyasa, and therefore he can speak. The speaker has the responsibility not to concoct, but to follow the previous acharyas. The purport also mentions the responsibility of the hearers. What is the responsibility of the hearers of the Srimad Bhagavatam? To be submissive, non-challenging, respect for the speakers and for the subject matter, trying to find the truth. So if we hear properly and taste properly, then we can hear the fruit of the Bhagavatam. Now, text 6. Visaya ucha tvaya kala pranani setihasani sanaga akyatanya attitani dharmasustrani yanyuta. The sages said, respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures, famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and the histories as well. For you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them purport. A Goswami or a bona fide representative of Sri Vyasadeva must be free from all kinds of vices. The four major vices of Kali Yuga are illicit connection with women, animal slaughter, intoxication, speculative gambling, and of all sorts. The Goswami must be free from all these vices before he can dare to sit on the Vyasa-sam. No one should be allowed to sit on the Vyasa-sam who is not spotless in character and who is not freed from the above mentioned vices. He not only should be freed from all such vices, but he must also be well versed in all the revealed scriptures in the Vedas. The Puranas are also parts of the Vedas, and histories like Mahabharata, Ramayana are also part of the Vedas. The Acharya or the Goswami must be well acquainted with all these literatures. To hear and explain them is more important than reading them. One can assimilate the knowledge of the revealed scriptures only by hearing and explaining. Hearing and explaining. Then you assimilate. Hearing is called Shravan, explaining is called Kirtan. The two processes, Shravan and Kirtan, are of primary importance to progressive spiritual life. Only one who has properly grasped the transcendental knowledge from the right source by submissive hearing can properly explain the subject matter. That is text 6 and purport. So here we have 3 more qualifications about the speaker and the hearer. must be free from vice. The speaker must be well versed in the Shastra. And having heard it, he must have heard the Shastras and must have explained it. So, Dharma Shastras and Puranas, they are in the category of Smriti. Shruti and Smriti. Smriti are the commentaries by the sages that Stuti learned his scriptures from his father. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that Acharya must be well acquainted with all these literatures. To hear and explain them is more important than reading them, he says. One can assimilate the knowledge of the revealed scriptures only by hearing and explaining. Hearing is Shravan, explaining is Kirtan. So the two processes of Shravan and Kirtan are of primary importance. So what does it mean that hearing and explaining is more important than reading? So, yes, you must be able to understand it, to explain it. If you do Kirtan, you must have Smaranam, also thinking about the subject matter. So most students and learners, they are assimilating 10% of what they read. They are assimilating 30% of what they hear, 60% of what they hear and see, and 90% of what they explain or teach. So the process will be explained in the teachings of Kapila Dev in the third canto, chapter 25, verse 25. Easy to remember, it's an important key verse. 3:25-25. Satam prasanga mama vira samvido bhavantarit karna rasayana kata tat yosna tabavarya vartmani shraddha ratya bhaktya anukramishati. So in association of devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Lord is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter is freed and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begins. So this verse explains what happens when you discuss the Lord's pastimes in association of devotees. Then you will relish this rasa ayana, that in India there are various types of rasayan that you can buy. The Brahma rasayan, it's for the brain, good for the brain. Now we have here the Bhagavat rasayan. We drink it also, but to the ears, and it goes to the heart. That's the prescription. Then Krishna is pleased, and he throws all dirt from our heart. Then one will swiftly progress to the path of Shraddha to attain to Rati, and then to Prema. So discussing means share realizations, and then you get realization also by that sharing. So yes, then text 7. Text 7 is the last verse we will discuss today, but then we have one section that is done, and next week the next section. So we'll go again read it. Yani Veda Vidamshasto Bhagavam Badarayana Anye Samunayo Sutta Paravara Vidu. Being the eldest Vedantis or Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the novels of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead. And you also know other stages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. Purport. Srila Prabhupada is a natural commentation on the Brahma Sutra or the Badarayani, the Vedanta Sutras. It is called natural because Vyasadeva is the author of the Vedanta Sutra and Srimad Bhagavatam, or the essence of all Vedic literature. Besides Vyasadeva, there are other sages who are the authors of 6 different philosophical systems, namely Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Patanjali, Jaimini, and Astavakra. So these are the Saddarshans. Theism is explained completely in Vedanta Sutra, whereas in other systems of philosophical speculation, practically no mention is given to the ultimate cause of all causes. One can sit on the Vyasasana only after being conversant in all systems of philosophy, so that one can present fully the theistic view of the Bhagavatam in defiance of all other systems. Sutta Goswami was a proper teacher, and therefore the sages at Namisaranya elevated him to the Vyasasana. Srila Vyasadeva is designated herein as the personality of Godhead because he is the authorized, empowered incarnation. So about the sixth darshan, if you want to learn more about that, you can go to the 10th canto, chapter 87, text 25, purport. There it's nicely explained. It would be too long to go in these details. But so the Srila Prabhupada wanted us to learn the philosophy so that we would be able to meet all kinds of opposition. In 1975, Srila Prabhupada was talking about the Yamadutas who got defeated by the Vishnudutas. They went to Yamaraj and said, "What is this? Is there something higher than you?" Then Yamaraj said to preach to them, "No, Narayan is higher." So Srila Prabhupada said, we should know the philosophy because we may be challenged. Somebody may ask, are you just selling the book? You know what's in the book? So we have to know the philosophy. In the audience of Namisaranya, there were so many different stages and philosophies. So Sutta had to speak in a way that was relevant to all. If you don't know the six darshans, you can check this, the 10th canto, this chapter 87. There these six darshans are explained. Darshan means to see the truth. To see, have darshan. They have different ideas of what is the truth. So maybe just to finish, I want to give a short overview of what we just discussed. So we have heard the great sages headed by Saunaka. They were anxious to perform acts to bring peace to the world. Srimad Bhagavatam is presented in order to bring about real peace and prosperity. Those who listen to the Bhagavatam may put questions to the speaker in order to elicit the clear meaning, but it should not be done in a challenging spirit. One must learn the transcendental subject by submissive oral reception from the right source. The sages address the speaker, Sutta Goswami, with great respect. And we heard that the Goswami, or a bona fide representative of Vyasadeva, must be free from all vices. It must be free from illicit sex, animal slaughter, intoxication, speculative gambling. The Acharya or the Goswami must also well be acquainted with all this literature. Shravan and Kirtan assimilate the revealed scriptures by hearing and explaining. But to properly explain, one must hear from the right source by submissive hearing. Then Sukadev Goswami, he is, of course, a representative of Srila Vyasadeva. Srila Vyasadeva, who is an authorized and powered incarnation. And then the last verse we heard, that is the essence of what we have discussed. That we will hear about the qualities more about the qualities about the speaker of the Bhagavatam in the beginning of the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto. So that's it. Any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Yeah.
No questions. Just a comment that you nicely explained the requirements, and please bless us so that we can also have those characteristics to study Bhagavatam.
Yeah, it's good to remind us regularly from these qualities that I know Bhakti Charamaj wanted us to study the Bhagavatam and to memorize the verse for the next morning already, every day, that none of us could do it, but we try our best. But yes, it's you think this approach is useful?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then we continue next week with the next session, because by that we get to hear the whole Bhagavatam in detail.
Yes,
good. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward then to see you next week. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. Hare Bol.